Hey, what's up, guys? It's Broleebro. I've been away from YouTube for a while, but I'm back and excited to bring you guys a new little classic WoW discussion video. I haven't made a video in a while since I was actually at BlizzCon last year and got to see the classic WoW announcement in person, which was awesome. And I've been dying to make classic videos or just videos in general, really. And I'm finally at a point where I'm able to start doing so again. So yeah, today we're going to be breaking down what class you guys should be looking to play whenever Blizzard finally does launch this beautiful game, which we are all so excited about, of course. But so before we get into it, let me just say that I have always been a little bit more into PvP. So in this video, there will be slight bias to that. I do know a little bit more about that in all areas of WoW, really vanilla included. I'm a multi-rank 1 gladiator in retail, and pretty much ever since Mists of Pandaria, that's all I've ever really done in retail WoW. Like, I just log on Q3s and log off. If the season's good, I'll, try and, hold, high ranking throughout the season. Or if the season kind of sucks, like WoD or Legion, at least PvP wise, I'll pretty much just log on the last week or two, try and make a quick rank 1 or glad push. So like in Legion, for example, this past year, 2 years, season 1 I got 2950. Hoped that was high enough for rank 1. It wasn't quite, and I pretty much haven't played since. I've been playing private realms or other games, all that stuff. But yeah, so with that in mind, let's just keep in mind that I do have a little bit more expertise and favor towards the PvP side of things. But in terms of vanilla, I have done most endgame several times on various realms. I have 560s across realms, pretty much Nostalrius, Light Soap, that stuff. But yeah, so with that being said, let's hop into the video. The way I'm going to be doing this is by breaking each class into 4 important sections, which should really display what I feel are the most important pros and cons of each class for Classic. 1, how easy or hard the class is to level from 1 to 60, and how fun or boring it is. 2, how well the class does in early game world PvP while leveling up. For me personally, this is my favorite part of vanilla WoW, especially on a new server. World PvP is a vanilla WoW staple, and I've always found it to be even more fun in the early levels, as everyone is, the places are highly populated, everybody's fighting over mobs and objectives and everything. It's just, for me, it is definitely the most fun part of vanilla WoW, especially when all these new private servers are coming out, fresh this, fresh that. It's definitely the thing I look the most forward to. And then 3, the class's viability in endgame PvE. And 4, the class's viability in endgame PvP. So now that you guys know the format, let's jump into the classes. I hope you guys all enjoy this, and I hope you guys find it helpful as we look forward to Classic WoW, especially for those of you who maybe have never experienced vanilla WoW and are a little bit worried about the daunting 1 to 60 grind. So anyway, the first class we'll be hopping into is Warrior. Alright, so 1, Warrior is definitely the worst class when it comes from leveling 1 to 60. They simply attack too slowly, so dodges and misses hurt them incredibly badly. You have no innate sustain, and you have poor defensive cooldowns. They also struggle to kill multiple mobs at a time. Leveling progressively gets better for Warrior, I guess as it does for most classes though. And certain weapon spikes like Whirlwind Axe around level 35 or so helps a shitload. Having a good weapon is a huge thing for all melee classes, especially the slower melee classes like Warrior or Enhanced Shaman. And yeah, that's really something you're going to want to look out for. Just get those big massive spikes. You're going to kill things way quicker. And then for, 3 to 4 levels, you'll be having a good time. And then maybe when that weapon starts scaling down, you're going to need to start looking for another one. Or you're going to have a bad time again. 2, world PvP while leveling for a Warrior is a bit hit or miss depending on player skill and gear. Like I said, weapons are a huge deal. For example, if you fight a mage level 35 without your Whirlwind Axe, you may charge, get an auto or a heroic strike off, and then he will blink and kite you, and you probably won't get any more hits off, maybe 1 or 2 more before you die. However, if you have Whirlwind Axe in that same exact fight and it goes the same way, you might just one-shot them. So gear and player skill plays a huge role. And the Warrior will struggle versus mages and things that can kite them, especially early when they have, less ways to get to the class, like before you have intervene and stuff. However, mobile squishies like Priest and Lock are easy prey. Vanilla is very matchup based, especially with a Warrior. 3, Warrior has a best friend game PvE in the sense that all 3 specs are acceptable. Most classes are pigeonholed into 1 or 2 specs. However, Warrior can get away with all 3. Though of course Prot is the go-to. That is what is going to be in the most high demand. And then when it comes to DPS, you can pretty much get away with both. But yeah, Fury is probably a little bit better for PV DPS. 4, endgame PvP for Warrior is really where the class shines in my opinion. And this is why they are the most rewarding class in vanilla, I would say. You go from struggling 1 to 60 to simply kill mobs. If you aggro 2 mobs, you might just die, and you're really going to hate your life early on, especially if it's your first time on a warrior. But a 60 warrior with gear is just absolutely insane. You're going to destroy world PvP. You're going to destroy BGs with pocket healers. You're just going to kill everybody, and you're not going to die. You're just going to run into the middle of fucking AB, have 2 or 3 healers on you, and you're going to feel like may die. You're going to destroy everybody. You simply do too much damage and have decent survivability, especially with a pocket healer. You're just a god. Next up, we're jumping into Rogue. Rogue is another melee class that can struggle a little bit 1 through 60, but if you know what you're doing, they're not too bad. Especially early levels, though, yeah, it is like 1 to 10 before you dual wield is a little bit rough. However, unlike Warrior, you have much better defensive CDs, and with Stealth, you can sneak quest objectives and choose your fights more carefully. Once you get dual wield and start to get some decent weapons like Cruel Barb or the SM plus RFD quest swords, that combo is really nice around level 37, 38. You start doing pretty damn well. You can handle multiple mobs with your defensive like evasion. You kill things pretty quickly. Combat has a little bit of AoE damage as well. And if a fight ever goes bad, you can just vanish or sprint away pretty easily. 2, Rogue is a world PvP god, and early level really isn't too much different. As a rogue, you always have the privilege of pretty much always choosing your fights, unless you're caught questing without vanish and with dots. But even then, you can maybe sprint away and say fuck it. Since you can pick most of your fights, you're going to win most of your fights. You're not going to pick a bad fight, right? So a rogue can either CC lock and destroy their opponent, or just simply one-shot them early if you're leveling with daggers. You know, you can just walk up to a mage or warlock who is questing and just bang, he's gone. The rogue can be a CD reliant class, however, and that's why I'd say the higher level, the better off the rogue is, unless you're just going for the one-shot ambush cheeses. 3, this one's pretty simple. Rogue is amazing in endgame PvE. One of, if not the highest DPSers in the game, and always needed. You want a rogue in pretty much every situation. The only downside is your DPS as assassination or sub is a lot lower and harder to pull off, so you might be pigeonholed into combat, at least if you're looking to top the charts and do as much as you can. So if you're not a fan of combat or being held down to one spec, if you want to, be the most optimal, you might not like it as much. 4, with the theme of rogues being amazing in vanilla, it's finished strong. Rogues are a fucking beast, man. Like, they just really are. If you've never seen World of Roguecraft, make sure you look into it after this. It was the first ever PvP movie I saw as a kid, and goddamn, man, it really got me into PvP, got me way more into WoW, and it was disgusting. Rogues can do absolutely gross things. Their CDs and CC are just too strong. Your damage is insane. You can control your enemy almost forever. You do insane amounts of damage, and you have really good defensives. A good mage can dismantle you a little bit, but even a good rogue can hold their own, and with proper CD usage, you have a chance in pretty much every fight. And like I said, if you don't like your odds in that fight, run away from it. Don't open up. I said warriors are the best in endgame PvP, but that's only with gear. Without it, rogue is king. Rogues can get away with just pretty much any to no gear. Like I said, watch World of Roguecraft, you'll see what I mean. Oh, and like I said, one more time, a rogue can just run away from the warrior. You don't like your odds against May-Die? Don't fight him. Next up, we have Druid. Number 1, I would say Druid is kind of average at leveling. Not amazing, but not bad. If you go Feral, you kill things at a decent clip, but you take a lot of damage in squishy cat form, and you may have to shift to heal a lot. Moonkin, you will kill things fairly quick, but you wound really fast. It's just not worth it. I would say go Feral and don't be afraid to quest in bear form for less downtime, sort of like the priest mentality. You kill things a little slow, but you don't take too much damage. It's pretty efficient, you don't have much downtime, and there's not really a threat of dying too often. The Druid, however, can handle multiple mobs in almost every situation with their forms. You have so many options as a Druid. You can really get away with doing anything or any play style, and you're probably going to be okay. 2, if you level as Feral, you are kind of just a worse rogue here. And if you level as Balance, you're kind of just a worse mage. This is sort of why Druids are forced to be resto endgame, sadly. That being said, however, a Druid, while not being the master of anything, is great at everything. So a good player can pretty much outplay every situation. That's why I recommend the Druid if you want to challenge yourself. Incredibly warded master. The last class I played on the private server was a Druid for that exact reason. It feels really good to be able to just have so many tools at your disposal and maybe not be the best. Oh shit, I forgot to change the graphic. I'm an idiot. Sorry about that. But yeah, it feels really good to just be able to do so much, right? And to not be, a rogue or a warrior or a mage where it's expected. Yeah, it's just really a rewarding playstyle. 3, druids are great for endgame PvE, but for the most part, you are forced to heal. Bear form takes are pretty decent, but a lot of people don't know that, and it might be a bit harder to get accepted into raids, but you can make it work. Moonkin in Classic is pretty much just a meme. This is where the term Oomkin comes from. You cast a few Moonfires, which do little damage, and you're already just about tapped out. Would not recommend. And then 4, again, druids are great for endgame PvP, and every BG will want one, but sadly, pretty much is resto. Feral and Boomkin are, again, kind of just worse rogues or mages, but like I said, a skilled player, you can do great things. You can handle pretty much any situation. While you might not have the raw damage or CC as a rogue or mage, you have other things that they do not. And if you use your kit to the fullest with all the vast amount of spells you have, a druid can be a beast, literally. This is more so in 1v1 situations, though. I don't think Feral or Boomkin is the best in BGs, unfortunately, but you can still, of course, get away with it. Next up is Hunter. Let me grab a drink of water really quick. Number 1, Hunters are 100% the best here. You do great damage. You're always safe with your pet by your side. Your pet just holds the aggro, does almost half of your damage, if not more, and keeps you safe while you just pretty much just AFK in the back with the auto tag going. With the pet at their side, the hunter is adept at quickly killing mobs one by one, while also being safe enough to kill 3 or 4 at a time. The pet will take the majority of the damage. It takes quite a bit to die, and you can always just, res it. It's not the biggest deal if your pet dies. And you always have trap. If things do get out of hand, you have freezing trap as a pretty, reliable form of CC. Hunters are the king at leveling speed in vanilla, as they just have the least amount of downtime. You kill things surprisingly fast for how safe you are. I highly recommend Hunter to any players who are new to vanilla for the easiest transition. Just keep in mind that 1 to 10 is a little bit of a bitch without the pet, and you might kind of hate your life. It's sort of similar to a rogue before you get dual wield, or as a druid before you get bear form. It's kind of a pain, but it's not really a big deal. 2, more of the same. Pets are just fucking OP, man. You're going to destroy casters as the pushback early game from your pet is just, it's too oppressive. It really is gross. I fucking hate hunters, honestly. And melee you can kite pretty well, especially early game before the melee classes have all their gap closers and CC. Hunters are a beast with the beast, man. I fucking hate them. 3, endgame PvP, hunters still do well. Solid DPS with little drawback. Hunter's ability to use CC, use their pet, and kite away always makes them a required class for a few encounters. There's a couple of raids where you absolutely need a hunter for a few things. And you just really can't go wrong with this class, right? Like, they may not be the best at just raw DPS, but they're not too far behind. And like I said, there's a few scenarios where you really do want them in your group. Yeah, you just can't go wrong with them. And it's also, I would say, just about the easiest DPS rotation. All DPS rotations in vanilla are fairly simple. Frostbolt spam, Shadowbolt spam, whatever, but Hunter is right up there. 4, endgame PvP is still just more of the same. Your pet fucking destroys casters. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, you have Viper Sting, right? Which is by far my most hated vanilla spell. They take all your mana while their pet kicks your ass. Over at 60, the casters have a little bit more tools at their disposal to make it a free fight. Like the mage has shield to like get rid of the pushback a little bit, and they can try and sheep your pet while they have the shield right before the pushback makes it impossible to sheep the pet. But if you're BM and your pet's immune to CC, I don't really see a way for you to lose most 1v1 matchups. Melee matchups you still do pretty well, but they become a lot harder as well. In BGs, you're mostly useful for just throwing out damage and Viper Stings from afar, Umi all the healers. You have decent CC as well, pretty good damage. Again, you really can't go wrong with a Hunter. As much as I hate Hunter in vanilla, they are a cool class. And I would highly recommend it to anybody who is new and maybe a little bit afraid of the transition to vanilla if it's your first time or something. Definitely the easiest to learn, easiest to play, I would say, in most scenarios. But, you can't expert them. You can become an expert on them and do some cool things. So, next up is Shaman, which is my personal favorite class. Obviously, as anyone who knows me will know. I've mained it since early MOP, and most of my experience in rank 1 titles are on the class. Vanilla is a lot different though, especially without lava burst, which I'm very used to. But I still love shaman. It's still super super fun. 1 to 60 isn't the best time for a shaman, but it's pretty solid. You don't have much AoE or great CDs, so multiple mobs can be a problem. But totems help you, and you can always heal yourself, so you can handle most situations. As Ellie, you kill mobs pretty fast and safely, but you wound fairly often. You have a decent amount of downtime. As Enhance, you can one-shot a mob with a Wind Fury proc, or kill it somewhat slower, but you have much less downtime than Ellie, as you don't really spend too much mana. You maybe just use one shock, and then maybe toss yourself one heal at the end of an encounter, right? So a lot less downtime, but unless you're getting big Wind Fury procs, you do kill things slower than Ellie. Overall, Shaman is solid thanks to healing spells and totems, but it's not really insane, right? It's not like a Hunter or Warlock. It's just leveling's okay. 2, this is where the Shaman really shines for me, and is in vanilla 1v1 situations. You have great kiting with Earthbind and Frost Shock, and if a melee class is on you, even if you respect Ellie, you do a pretty insane amount of damage just with your one-hander, and you're kind of safe from the shield as you get a lot of armor. So like auto-attacking plus Frost Shock on CD, Searing Totem, and kiting is enough to win most situations, most 1v1 situations against melee. And casters you do really good against with Grounding Totem, Earth Shock to interrupt, which for those of you who maybe don't play vanilla and you don't know, that Earth Shock back in the day was your interrupt instead of Wind Shear. You have Tremor, so the Warlock Priest matchup's a lot easier. And then you just have insane bursts as Ellie with Chain Lightning and Shocks, or as Enhance, of course, if you get the big fucking proc, the big Wind Fury one shot, you're beating just about anybody. Enhance is obviously more random and reliant on procs, and can struggle when it gets kited. It doesn't really have good gap closers, but if you get 1 to 2 auto attacks off, you can always finish them with your spells, right? So Shamans are a beast here, and this is when they're the most fun for me. Number 3, Shamans sort of get the Druid or just the hybrid treatment here for the most part. You're amazing and well received, and people really want you, but pretty much just as Restoration, right? It just, similarly to the Druid, Enhanced can get away with 5-mans, and maybe some raids with Nightfall, a mace with a particular mechanic on it that is helpful for raids, but that's pretty much about it. I can't see another scenario where you would want an Enhanced in your raid. The utility from totems is provided by Resto Shamans anyway, so there's no benefit to having an Enhanced Shaman other than if they have Nightfall. Ellie is similar to Moonkin as being a meme, but in PvE they provide a little bit more damage and a little bit more mana sustain, but sadly you still have a very hard time being accepted into raids. Ellie and Moonkin and all these, sort of meme hybrids get a little bit better with the MC updates and ZG gear, but really not too much. You're pretty much going to want to stick to PvE as a DPS, or PvP as a DPS Shaman. 4, Shaman here again is really, really strong. Most BGs will want Resto, but the same rules apply for 1v1s and World PvP as they were for leveling. You have great tools to beat casters as both Ellie and Enhance. And as Enhance, you can out-trade melees oftentimes, especially if you proc, of course. And as Ellie, still the same thing. You can kite them and self-heal while doing great damage. In BGs, I would say most, like if you're in an organized group, they're going to want you as Resto, but you can definitely get away with playing Enhance or Ellie in an organized, pre-made group. Like, there's no downside really, right? You're pretty good in PvE as any spec is Shaman. As an Enhance, you're pretty much just going to run around purging things, dropping your totems, hoping to one-shot. As Ellie, you're going to be sitting in the back, maybe off-healing your warriors, your front line if you need to, and just throwing insane amounts of damage, hoping to one-shot with a big Chain Lightning crit. Next up, we have a Paladin, and I need another drink. Excuse me, a lot of talking. So first off, Paladin is definitely one of the worst leveling classes in vanilla. You level somewhat like a warrior. You basically just seal and auto-attack them to death. Paladin, however, at least has some spells to help you out other than just auto-attacks like warriors. And you have insane defensive cooldowns like Bubble and Land Hands to survive. And self-heals are always great, right? You can also AoE level as a Paladin with Consecration a little bit, but I would recommend just sticking to Ret, leveling up the boring way. Paladin 1 to 60 is really slow and boring, but there's not too much downtime. It's somewhat efficient, right? It's just a little slow. 2, Paladin, in my experience, paladins are, in my experience, are decent in early game world PvP. The problem is you don't have any slows really, and your only form of CC is Hodge. However, the Hodge is obviously, it's big. So you can be easily kited by casters, and a lot of melee classes will outtrade you or have more CC, right? The good thing, however, is you have absurdly overpowered cooldowns in the 1v1 and 1vx situations with bubble and land hands, like I said. And in 1v1, oftentimes, Hodge is just enough to burst down a cloth or leatherware, especially in the lower levels, especially before they don't have Trinket or something, right? A lot of people level 1 to 60, maybe they just avoid PvP, even on PvP servers, or maybe they just forget to buy their Trinket. Not every class's Trinket gets them out of stuns, so again, as another melee class, weapons are super important. You're going to want to be looking for those big spikes, especially since versus many melee classes, or versus many classes, only in your Hodge will be your time to connect, right? Outside of Hodge, like I say, you don't really have any slows. Your utility isn't the best, so you're going to get kited a lot of the time. The Hodge is pretty much your window to shine, and a lot of your 1v1s in world PvP situations leveling up are going to be, can you kill them in the Hodge? If not, you probably lost the fight, right? That's how it's going to go against a lot of classes, so making the most of it and having those big weapon spikes and doing the most damage you can is pretty important. 3, Paladin is another great class for endgame, but pretty much just suffers the same fate as all hybrids, right? You're just pretty much forced to heal, and there's really not much else to say here for the Paladin, unfortunately. I can't think of the last time I saw a Ret or a Prot get away with being in a raid, especially like a try-hard raid or anything, right? It's really not going to happen, I'm sorry. 4, same thing here, really. Paladins, endgame, are monsters, right? PvP-wise. As Holy, your burst healing is pretty insane, right? Whereas Druids are more hot reliant, right? You're going to want to be healing over time. Paladins have really big burst heals. And that's why you're the most important to be the pocket healer for Warrior. You have really big burst heals to keep them alive. And you provide a lot of utility. Even as a Holy Spec Paladin, though, if you find yourself in a 1v1 situation, auto attacks are really important, right? In vanilla, health pools aren't that big, and there's just not that many DPS spells. So just 1v1ing while like healing up is enough to win a lot of 1v1s, especially if it's like poor gear or something. You might be able to beat a Warrior 1v1. In fact, you might even be the favorite as like a newly geared 60 Paladin versus a newly geared 60 Warrior. You have Hodge, you have good heals, you have Bubble, you have really good CDs, so if you're worried about 1v1s or World PvP as Holy, you still have a chance. And then as Ret, you're kind of similar to Enhance, where you just have absurd burst when you proc. And then you definitely have better CC than an Enhance with Hodge, and you have better cooldowns, so not bad. And then Prot in PvP just really isn't a thing. I cannot remember the last time I saw one. If you want to make it work, good luck, do your thing, man. But yeah. Next up, we have Priest. Now, Priest is amazing for leveling, and it is incredibly efficient, probably the most efficient class, really. You have basically zero downtime. Early levels, you just grab Wand Spec and Spirit Tap, and this allows your Wand to be your core source of damage, which obviously costs no mana, and then Spirit Tap allows you to regen mana after killing a mob. Basically, you just Mind Blast or Mind Flay, throw up a dot, throw up a shield, and wand them down. And then at the end of that, you already have spent almost zero mana, and then you're going to regen the majority of it, right? Super simple, super efficient, a little bit boring, but it's, it works. It's pretty fast, no downtime. And then after 40, you can respec and get Shadow Form, because at 40, right, you wouldn't have the amount of talent points needed for Shadow Form, since you have a couple of points in different specs for Wand Spec. But you're still going to want to go grab Wand Spec after that, because even in Shadow Form, you're not going to want to just spam spells, or you're going to be each fight, right? You're still going to want to rely on your wand a lot of the time. 2, Priest, again, is just amazing here. World PvP early game as a Priest is really nice. You're going to outdamage a lot of your rivals. Your base numbers are pretty insane, and you have a shield which absorbs a surprising amount of damage, especially in the early levels when classes can only do a finite amount of damage, really, before you or before you get kited or whatnot. So yeah, the shield's insane early levels. Not that many classes have purge or abilities or ways to easily get rid of it. So you also have a great form of CC and Fear, of course, and then a bit later you get Silence, which will make you just destroy any caster pretty much. You have an offensive dispel to get rid of things like Warlock Sacrifice, Mage Ice Barrier, Silent Sphere. You beat most casters. Warrior is your biggest enemy, absolutely. Warriors destroy Clothwares. Warriors can immune fear, and you don't really have a good way to kite people as a priest other than fearing, running, and then mind flaying people without gap closers. Like a rogue, right? If you get a little bit of distance, you can maybe kite them a little bit with your with your mind flay. You can also get blackout procs, which is really OP actually, especially if you go 5 points early into it. It's a really good form of CC, but it is proc reliant, right? It is random, so it's not the most reliable thing in the world. Every other melee, like I said, you can at least get a fear off and get a couple of casts off. 3, as I'm sure you can guess by now, you're just getting hybrid treatment, man. You can do really well, but pretty much just when you heal. Some raids will maybe accept one Shadow Priest early on into vanilla progression, but that's at the very most. The way the debuff, Jesus Christ, debuff slots work in vanilla, you can only have so many debuffs on a mob, right, before they start overriding each other, and Shadow Priest just takes up too many debuff slots. After the patch where the number of debuffs is increased, Shadow Priests actually become pretty good and pretty high, and become part of high demand. They do a lot of damage, and they're really useful later on. So like after ZG, Shadow Priests start to shine in PV. But until then, you're pretty much just forced to heal, and that's mainly as holy. 4, healers do what healers do in BGs, man. Priests are sort of similar to paladins, where they have mainly burst healing, but shields are obviously useful, give you a little bit of immediate protection, also a debuff blocker, or a dispel blocker, rather. Priests also have pretty good utility with offensive purge, with mana burn, a pretty good amount of damage actually with holy fire and stuff. And then you also have MC, right? So the priest has a lot of utility, good burst healing, and shields. Shadow, on the other hand, is just insane. You do ridiculous damage, and you become fairly tanky, like surprisingly tanky when you have good gear. Shields, Shadow form reduces your physical damage taken. Inner Fire gives you a lot of armor, so you become pretty surprisingly tanky and can sort of face tank a lot of melee classes while killing them with your dot and getting off cast when you can. Warriors remain your worst enemy here, but if you're able to get off maybe a Mind Blast before they charge you, put up your dot, hope for a blackout proc or something, your damage is so high, and you, like I said, you're deceivingly tanky, so you might have a chance to just sort of face tank the warrior as long as you get a cast off before they get that charge on you. Other than a warrior, you have a pretty good chance versus every other class with your fear, silence, shield, self heals, offensive dispels, and just high amounts of damage. Overall, a really good class. Next up, we have the Warlock. Warlock is similar to Hunter here. Having a pet tank damage for you is just too OP. You level incredibly efficient, as you rarely take damage, and you also get the ability to regen mana after fights like Priests do, in the form of a talent that basically gives your Drained Soul Spear tap, essentially, right? So you finish off the mob. So 1 to 60, you basically just cast your row of dots. Sometimes you don't even need all of them. You wand them, and then you Drain Soul to finish them and start regenning most of the mana that you spent. There's also a helpful macro that will destroy one of your soul shards that is in your soul shard bag, so you don't just start overflowing with soul shards and then remain in your bag, your soul shard bag, which is really helpful. You have little downtime, really high damage. You also have the luxury of being one of the few classes that's able to handle multiple mobs at a time. When I leveled my Warlock, most of the time I was fighting 2 to 4 mobs at a time, just dotting them, fearing one, switching aggro with my pet, right? So he's constantly taunting the one that may be coming to me. But even if I'm face tanking one of them, it's really not a big deal. 2, Warlock is one of the few classes that can truly 1vx, right? Up there with like the Mage of having the ability to get away with 1vx situations. The ability to multi-dot and just start whittling down multiple targets is really powerful, while also having fear. It just makes it possible, right? In tricky situations, you will also have a giant shield from sacrificing your Voidwalker. This ability alone makes it almost a sure thing that you beat any class 1v1 early game. Only a priest or a shaman can really challenge this with their offensive purge, and only a warrior can really stick on you well enough early game and do enough damage to hope to kill through it. The Warlock is just simply a beast in World PvP. You win most 1v1s, can outplay your opponent and have the ability to pull off 1v2s or 1v3s if you play it correctly. And like I said, early game, you're pretty much going to always be having out your Voidwalker when you're questing. There's no reason to really have out your Succubus or your Fell Hunter unless you're expecting World PvP, and then you would want a different one. But early game, that shield, the base ratio on it is pretty insane. It absorbs quite a bit of damage. 1 second, excuse me. Just lost my place. Uno momento, sorry about that. And then, so 3, Warlock is a must-have for pretty much every raid, and a lot of 5-mans. You do great damage. You have amazing debuffs to amplify other magical damage, usually mage's damage here. And you can also get away with playing a number of specs, right? There's a lot of variance on the specs you're able to pull off as a Warlock, which is always fun. Because in vanilla, you get maybe tired of spamming Frostbolt or whatever the case may be for your class, right? Though Destruction isn't particularly good in early vanilla, similar to a Fire Mage, as most of the early mobs are immune to fire damage. 4, Warlocks are just as they are early game here in World PvP, really just monsters. One of the big differences at 60, however, like I said, is you're not going to be using your Voidwalkers much. That's more of a questing thing. They're not that good at 60. The shield just starts falling off in power levels, and the amount of absorb isn't really comparable and not really worth it. Your Voidwalker also doesn't do much damage, like decent damage, but not too much, and that's pretty much all it provides. Instead, you use either the Succubus, which has the Seduce, which is a charm effect similar to Polymorph and doesn't break unless damaged or interrupted. This is great for going against melee classes when you need to start off a fight with the Seduce, so maybe you can get off that initial fear to get a little bit of space, start getting off your dots, especially against a warrior or something when you need a little bit of early space, or a rogue. This is also great for 1v2s or 1v3s, right? When you can't fear everybody because you only fear one mob at once, you maybe seduce one, fear the other, start dotting everybody up, maybe leave that one guy seduced while you're not focusing them down. The other option is, of course, Fell Hunter, which has an interrupt effect, which makes your matchup versus casters even more one-sided. You can also spec this to be a blanket silence, but of course hitting the interrupt is much more beneficial. The Fell Hunter also has a offensive dispel, which is really good, and it does quite a bit of damage. I personally like sticking to Succubus for both World PvP and BGs, but both are really good, and it's just sort of preference here. Overall, the Warlock is a monster in World PvP, really, really good in organized, groups, really, really good in BGs. You can't really go wrong, right? In a BG, you're just gonna be sitting there, dotting everything, fearing all the healers. You're just really, really useful. And then last but not least, of course, we have the Mage, which I would say is the overall best class in vanilla. 1 to 60 is great no matter what spec you go, but I would recommend Frost as the utility of the slow and the eventual safety of Ice Barrier. It's just too strong. Fire is a little bit more oomph, a little bit more raw damage, but Frost is also way less mana intensive, so therefore more efficient. Basically 1 to 60, you just Frostbolt down the targets and keep your distance. You can throw in Fire Blast for insane bursts, but it's a lot less efficient. It costs a lot of mana early on. And then, of course, you can wand any time to save some mana and finish off mobs. Overall, you kill mobs at a pretty decent clip while taking minimal damage as they're slowed, or you just take no damage to melee mobs, and you don't spend too much mana. You can also go a completely different route, which is what I usually do on private servers, and just AoE level. I'm a really big fan of it. It's a little bit more fun, at least for me, after I've done so many, climbs to 60, and the quest gets a little bit boring, but of course AoE leveling gets a little boring too, right? It's the same thing. You can basically start this at level 20 when you get Blizzard. If you aren't sure of how to do this, I recommend watching a video called In Frost We Trust on YouTube, which is sort of the guide I watched. But essentially you just round up a group of mobs, Nova, Blink, Blizzard them down, Cone of Cold when they get near you if you're high enough level. You have very little downtime at good farming spots with multiple packs, and they generally respawn by the time you clear the whole camp. You also get an insane amount of gold doing this, as the things you are killing are generally humanoids, and you also get a lot of cloth. And you have the chance at more rare items, right? You're just killing more mobs per level, so yeah, good way to make money. 2, Mage is the absolute king of World PvP. I think I said Rogue was, but no, fuck that, Mages. Early game, this isn't really any different either, though it does get better at 60, of course. You have more spells at your disposal, the more ability to pull off 1vx's with Ice Barrier and everything. Early game, The problem is, or really the only problem or downside even, is your damage isn't actually that high. Your raw numbers aren't too insane. And Fire Blast and Cone of Cold, which are your big burst, surprisingly enough, take a lot of bit of mana. So tank your targets or enemies that can maybe self heal a little bit might run you especially if you're already in the middle of like fighting a mob, right? Maybe you're at half mana. That being said, however, that's really only the even kind of bad part of being a mage, right? And you're still going to win most 1v1s, and you have the chance to pretty much outplay any 1v1, right? If you play well enough, you're going to win pretty much any 1v1. And you have the chance to truly win 1vx's, right? 1v2s, 1v3s. The mage can do it all, right? Just huge outplay potential, great CC, pretty good damage. That does get better at 60, though. 3, this is another area where mage excels. Every raid is going to want a mage, or at least a couple. And every 5-man would love to have a mage. They have really good CC. Of course, they want you for your water and your food. You're going to get used a lot. Maybe they want you for a portal after the run, but either way, you're wanted, so why complain, right? You can also run a variety of specs, which is really nice. Like I said, in vanilla, you're kind of held to certain specs oftentimes, but a mage can get away with it all. Though, like I said, fire becomes a little bit more useful in later on through the progression, where you're not just doing all these fire based raids where they're going to immune most of your damage. Arcane and some hybrid specs do pretty well too. 4, as I said, mage is king in world PvP. They have the ability to win any 1v1, outplay anybody, and they have the best chance at 1vx's with the most CC at their disposal. Good AoE damage, great AoE burst, high damage, great at everything. And unlike in the early levels, a geared mage at 60 hits really hard, especially when you get Shatter if you're Frost, or you get, Presence of Mind if you're Fire. You have absolutely insane damage, and you're not going to have to worry about, running out of mana before you finish somebody off, especially in 1v1. Unless, of course, it's a hunter with Viper Sting. Fuck hunters. Any organized PvP group or random BG will want multiple mages for hand down the best CC ability in the game. Polymorph, of course. Great damage, both single target and AoE, and pretty good survivability for being a caster. You have your Ice Barrier most of the time. You have your Blink, Block, or Blocks. You just can't go wrong with Mage. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative and helpful. If I missed anything or if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below. If you enjoyed and want to see more of me, please subscribe or throw a thumbs up. I've been away from YouTube for a while. This was a video I worked pretty hard on. A lot more talking than I expected. I should have had more water prepared, my God, but it was a fun one. And if YouTube isn't enough for you guys, you can always go check me out at twitch.tv/Broleebro. I'm currently not streaming too much, and if you see my channel go live, it likely will not be WoW until Northdale comes out, which is very soon. I think 2 days from now, 3 days, or when Classic officially comes out. Especially when Classic comes out, I'll be streaming absolutely every day. Probably do like a 72-hour stream or something crazy for that release. But yeah, if you catch me until then, it'll likely be League I'm playing. So, but hey, if you like League, feel free to check me out. But yeah, anyway, thanks for stopping by. If you made it all the way through the video, I really do appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed. Everybody have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.